Welcome to another program of Focus on Government and Development. This is our standing Thursday engagement. If you, the people of Dominica, to bring you up to date on the work of the government of Dominica. We're broadcasting live from the studios of DBS Radio. We're also live on Carrier FM. Those of you tuned in via social media, good evening and welcome. On this program, Focus on Government and Development, we look at various government initiatives. We speak to the policymakers, the people you've elected to work on your behalf, as well as those with a lead role on major government programs, initiative projects, such as the International Airport Project. Construction has begun on an international airport for Dominica, located in the northeastern community of Wesley. And on this evening's program, I speak with the Chief Executive Officer of the International Airport Development Company, the IADC, Mr. Samuel Johnson. Later in the program, I'll open up the lines to take your questions. This is your opportunity to seek clarity on aspects of this important national project. So for the next hour or so, we are talking airport matters with Samuel Johnson. Mr. Johnson, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Dion, and thank you for having me on. Good evening to your listeners. It's indeed a privilege and honor to be on your program, to have an opportunity to provide an update to the nation and to all interested parties as to where we are, what's going on, and answer any questions directly as it relates to the development of the international airport in Dominica and all the supporting works and studies and activities that have been ongoing for the past almost 2 years now.
Yeah. But before we delve too deeply into a discussion about the airport, I'd like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us a bit about your professional background and your role on the airport development project.
Yeah, well, I usually don't talk a lot about myself, but since you asked, I will. I have over 25 years professional experience working for various organizations, various roles in many different capacities, from very low budget, small initiatives to very large budget and complex initiatives. And I think the airport project fits somewhere in the middle of that. Professionally, I hold 2 professional degrees, undergraduate in engineering and postgraduate double major in business administration with focuses on supply chain management and marketing. Started working straight out of Sixth Form College, as it was called back then, at Barclays Bank PLC back then, and that actually turned out to be a very good experience in that at a very young age I was exposed to the importance of standard operating procedures, something that later on in life turned out to be very critical. In that at Barclays, being part of a much larger organization, there were standard procedures that I was introduced to on day one. After that, I went off to study, to do my undergrad in engineering, came back, worked at Josephine Gabriel, the Coca-Cola franchise bottler at the time. And there I was thrown into the deep end. They were in the midst, and we was able to work very closely with Mr. Louis Gabriel, somebody that I have a high regard and respect for, in terms of being able to relocate the facility from their Valley Road operations to Canefield. And for me, it was an exciting time because as a freshly minted industrial engineer, you got to get into the weeds of facilities layout, plant design, construction management, construction accounting, working very closely with coordinating production on one end, construction on the other end, and being able to transition from one facility, shut down one facility, open another facility without having too much impact on supply of finished goods. So that role, I think I learned a lot about the importance of scheduling and planning in terms of major projects. After Josephine Gabriel, I went off to do my MBA, and I was recruited from there by a management consulting firm, A.T. Kearney. So there I was actually, I tell people I moved to the States as an expat. I still have my original Astafans bed in my home in Florida. That I was relocated with furniture and everything to the States to work with Kearney, and I carry that along with me just as proof of my expat status. Anyway, at Kearney, I had the opportunity to work on pretty significant projects, very complex projects. I think the biggest one would have been responsible for a $10 billion storefront inventory rationalization. A lot of the work I worked on was in the transportation and distribution space.
Okay.
For quite a few Fortune 500 companies. Worked with pharmaceuticals as well, transportation. And then from Kearney went on to worked with them across the U.S. as in the Chicago, in Michigan, Cleveland, Toronto, Canada for a short while, the Virginia office. And then from Toronto, South Florida looked very attractive. So I joined Ryder Systems, which is a transportation company. They do supply chain solutions and over-the-road leasing, maintenance, and that sort of services. And started in their strategy department, working on strategy and development. And then over a period of 10 years, rose to be their vice president of global marketing with a focus on customer experience, customer loyalty, market insights, market intelligence.
Okay.
From that, then joined a consulting firm, went back to consulting with some colleagues of mine as a SVP and partner. And I think during that time, Hurricane Maria happened. And that's when I started spending a lot of time coming back and forth between Dominica and really looking for an opportunity to give back and get involved, right? And seeing how I could contribute in the development. And that is, I did some work in terms of tourism development, travel, air access, and then transitioned into this role at IADC. And in that capacity, I've been able to be involved in many aspects of the airport project, from concept development, concept refinement, project planning, and putting together the basic blocks for oversight. of the project.
All
So a relatively long answer to a short question.
Well, it gives us a clear idea of the kind of skills and expertise you bring to your role as a CEO of the Airport Development Company. So I'm just going to get right into the discussion that we're here for and ask you if you could provide us with the latest update on the work that is ongoing at the airport site in Wesley, led by the contracting firm CR5.
Yeah. So CR5, and I often talk about the project in 4 stages: getting ready to construction, getting ready to operate, and then finally operations. CR5 is in that zone right now, or the project actually is in that zone between getting ready to construct and constructing. And what that entails is mobilization of the contractor. Mm-hmm. So we've seen a few months ago the arrival of several pieces of equipment and several personnel from CR5 to the island. And the intent there being with an advanced team to really go through and get a feel for the site. They were given a lot of the initial concept documents through the tender process. They would have seen some of the preliminary geotech work. They would have seen some of the site plans and some of the preliminary designs that would have been done by Landrum and Brown working in preparation for the project. With their arrival on site, they started getting ready key areas that would help support the development of the project. So behind me, I think you see a lot of clearing ongoing. You'll see roadways coursing through the entire project site for the facilitation of movement of personnel, equipment, and materials. Mm-hmm. The batch plant area is being constructed, and that really is intended to provide the production facilities for concrete, asphalt. Concrete being a key requirement for all the civil works, the culverts, the tunnel, the apron of the airport, the retaining walls that have to be built. So that area, which is pretty visible off the road right now, is going to house that facility with some offices as well, for a production facility of that magnitude. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they, as you can see, have gone to work immediately. That 11-acre site was cleared and leveled in almost 2 weeks. With moving equipment directly from the port to the site. In addition to that, they also came with part of their design team earlier in January to do a review of some of the drawings and meet with key stakeholders, and also to get a feel for the island, because one of the things you want to ensure that in the final designs there's an appreciation for the local culture, the norms, even observing they must have driven around the entire island to get a feel for the construction, the slopes, the terrain. Separate and apart from what you read in reports is another thing to actually see it and feel it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of that work has been done and is ongoing right now, and more individuals are expected, more equipment is expected, and in working in close collaboration with the developer, we also trying to ensure that we put in place a plan, if you will, or a protocol insofar as ensuring that we engage as many locals as possible.
Okay.
in the project.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that later as well as the designs. But before we saw actual movement on the ground from CR5, there was an extended period of preparatory work. For example, we saw the construction of housing units at Wesley and other activity. So can you talk to us a little bit about what has been going on during that time in the lead up to the commencement of actual construction?
Yeah. So the airport where it's located it cuts across the end of Wesley, just going into the beginning of Woodfordale. So there was some, I think 70 property owners that were impacted, or 70 properties, over 200 and something individual properties impacted. And that includes a mixture of built properties, vacant lands, farmlands, lands that were under cultivation by squatters, properties that were being accommodated by squatters. So the first step really was to be able to relocate those individuals. So there was an extensive period of acquisition, negotiation with the property owners, and some of them being offered a mix of a cash or a swap, land swap or building swap or land and building swap or cash and land. Several different options were discussed with the impacted property owners. If you were to go up to the Joe Burton housing area, you would see an entire new development, residential development, that has happened over the period of time. And that really, and people have begun, I think most have moved into that development. And that enables the contractor to take control of the airport site. Yeah. As you would appreciate, with the amount of earthwork and construction and everything that is about to ensue, you'd want to ensure that the residents in the impacted zone would have relocated, so that work can proceed unencumbered. In addition to that, there was also updates that were done to the master plans. The initial master plan development started, I think, way back in 2017 or 2016 thereabout. But a lot has changed. A lot has happened since then to 2021 when the works started in earnest. So the update of the master plan and the concept designs were all done or revisited during that period. And as you would appreciate, since then and now we were hit by Hurricane Maria. So the whole question of resiliency and ensuring that that we could account for or reflect, if you will, the resilient agenda of the government is one key thing. And then the other one that happened in 2020, we all lived through a pandemic, and countries all scrambled to respond. You saw makeshift medical facilities and quarantine facilities and testing facilities popping up in airports all over the world. Yeah, so we had to ensure that the designs and the layout were such that they would reflect those new realities, so that if and when, because unfortunately I don't think it's going to be the last pandemic in our lifetime, but when another one comes across, that the designs would have taken the space requirements for that additional processing to be to happen at the airport site without having to go through makeshift tents or canvases or conversion of storage facilities. Okay. Yeah. So the inclusion of these facilities were added, and several additional facilities were included in the design and in the master plan. The runway length also was something that was closely looked at as to what would be the optimal runway length. I think there's been a lot of talk as to the evolution or the improvements made in aircraft technology and the ability to operate longer distances on shorter runways.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to determine the stage lengths that we were going after, the source markets we were going after, and the aircraft that was going to be in use and in service by the airlines that we are talking to, or the airlines that are coming into the region. So that was done. We ended up with a runway length of about 2850 meters. That is, I think, roughly 9,300 feet thereabout.
Mm-hmm.
With the design aircraft being a Boeing 777, which is going through several different model extensions and model upgrades, and the Airbus A350, which also is one of the more dominant. We are able also to accommodate the 787 Dreamliner, and for stage lengths as far as the Middle East and China, if and when that becomes a reality. Keeping in mind that the key source markets that we are currently talking to would be in Europe and North America for the most part.
And of course, you constructed a lab for soil testing,
Yes.
an administrative building.
A key part of the oversight function, which actually is a key part of the developer's role, actually,
Mm-hmm.
is to ensure that there is quality control tests that are ongoing. So a brand new national laboratory has been built, which will enable the ongoing testing of concrete and asphalt and soils. The geotech study that is ongoing is also going through there in terms of the soils testing that's going on. I think at last update we were roughly at 160, 150 boreholes.
Okay.
And that I know there was some discussion as to, well, how can you start construction without completing the geotech study?
Yes, you've
It is
explained that you're doing it simultaneously. Please tell us why.
Yeah. So the site is an over 500 acre site. Now you will appreciate that the key areas in the construction process would be the development of the platform for the airstrip, the runway strip, and the terminal and the facilities. So those areas have been prioritized in the geotech testing, right? So you'd start from the center and go out to be able to build a profile. With the roughly 160 that have been completed, we, according to FAA guidelines, are working with a 60 meter by 60 meter grid.
Okay.
To ensure that we get a complete and cohesive appreciation for all nuances happening in the area. So one of the key areas that we started first was the site, which is located where the terminal, and the landside facilities are going to be located. And why did we focus on that area? Because that area was the area where a lot of the cutting was going to happen. One of the things the designers tried to do is to ensure that there was a balanced cut and fill, where 60% cut, 40% fill, knowing fully well that some of the cut material would not be suitable for fill. So we very quickly had to ascertain the quality of the majority of the cut material to do tests and to determine what treatments or what additives or what different methodologies could be used to to make it suitable or to determine what amount was suitable for fill. In the development of the platform, the geotech study wanted to ensure that going beneath 6 to 8 meters beneath the finished level, we had a good appreciation for the material and the level of compaction and the load-bearing capacity of the area was properly understood. So, with that initial pass-through, you can then now start doing works, and whilst you refine and fine-tune with additional geotech work as you go out in less critical areas, but with a better understanding of what's on site, what can be used. We're actually in the process right now. One of the areas that the contracting firm wanted to be doubly sure about was the compactability of the material, because in some of the areas, as you can appreciate, we'll be cutting tops of hills and filling valleys. So, and in some areas there will be very tall slopes that we want to ensure, well, what's the gradient, how do we stabilize to ensure that there's no slope failure. So testing to determine how best to work with the material on site and what additional materials would have to be brought on site if required.
Is this an unusual approach, this undertaking of the geotechnical study or the soil work or the boring of holes to facilitate the geotechnical study along with the kind of work we see ongoing on the ground as we speak? Is it an unusual approach?
No, I mean, I'll give you an order of magnitude. The last geotech study that was done for the last airport, I think, had about 24, 25 boreholes done with 6 trial pits. So the testing there was, and they were able to provide some insights in there. So we're orders of magnitude, 7 or 8 times what the last completed geotech study tested. Mm-hmm. So it really is, and I think that is not to knock the last studies. You have procedures changing, you have requirements, regulations changing all the time, but it just gives you a sense as to the order of magnitude in terms of the level of work that's ongoing right now.
Yeah, and I certainly think just already we've gotten an appreciation of the kind of detailed work that goes into a project of that nature. Mm-hmm. And a project of that magnitude will have significant impact on the environment. And we know that a local firm, Ocean Caraïbe Consultants, conducted the environmental and social impact assessment. How important was this step in the process?
Well, actually, it was 3 firms that were included in the environmental impact assessment. It was Ocean Caraïbe, which was the lead firm doing some of the field work. We're supporting work from Applied Technology and Management out of the States, okay, and JFK Engineering in Dominica. So, and they did, I must say, a very exhaustive on the ground, in all nooks and crannies, field survey, to get an appreciation for the natural environment, looking for endemic species of plants or animals, looking at the various water catchment and waterways, and really that is to be able to inform the project as to, and make recommendations to the project as to how to minimize potential negative impacts, of the project. So that was done. I think it started in 2021 thereabout, and was completed in February of 2022 with the final report submitted then, with a finding that there were no endemic species. One of the things that I think we need to appreciate is that the site on which the airport is being built used to be under cultivation. So it's former plantations, and actually I think we've heard a lot about the former plantations from way back when. So it's not like virgin forest that is being mowed down. It used to be on the banana and coconut production back in the day, a large part of it. But regardless, they were able to go through it, and what evolved after these plantations were stopped being under production, to make recommendations to ensure that any potential risks that they saw could be mitigated. That report was shared with the developer, who in turn included it in part of the RFP process. So all firms involved in the bid process and the contracting would have had visibility into the EIA. And in addition to that, there were consultations that we've done with stakeholders in the community. We've had town halls in the community. We've also engaged with key stakeholders of the airport, that being those who currently operate at Douglas Charles and would most likely be transitioning into the new airport, to ensure that we capture their perspectives on what was being done, and ensure that there were no blind spots, and to ensure that the designs that were being developed were representative of the needs of these key stakeholders.
All right. Yeah, and I know this has been discussed at length, but I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Johnson, because I have you here this evening. Why was the current site selected to construct the international airport as opposed to another site nearby, previously considered by the former administration?
Yeah, and you're correct. This has been discussed ad nauseum.
Yeah.
And I know there was like a detailed report that was done by the Prime Minister in Parliament, I think a year or two ago, detailing I think over 10 or 12 different locations that were assessed, and the work that was done by a airport development committee comprising of some 13 individuals to review the last airport design and make recommendations insofar as to go no go off it, and I would just there was also a consulting firm that was brought in also to review the designs. I can read through some. I don't want to ad lib because I know it's an area that there's been a lot of discussion, but I'll just read out some of the key points. The proposed runway orientation calls for a curved, non-precision approach for landing, which also classifies the airport as a visual airfield. That is a big one because we're in discussions right now as we speak with airlines. An instrument approach is something, especially with low cloud cover or weather, which is a frequency area, that we want to ensure that we are able to have instrument rated airfield. They go on to say the airfield cannot meet full instrument landing capabilities, the highest recommended procedure. The proposed airport meets conditional ICAO requirements. There are serious surface obstacles, infringement issues pertaining to mountains of Mount Odiab, Destiny, and Diablo Terre to a lesser extent. The likely frequent closure of the airport for safety concern due to inclement weather heavy rainfall, and low cloud cover. These surrounding terrain concerns will contribute, among others, a displaced threshold, meaning a section of the runway would not be usable space. That obtains right now at Douglas Charles, where you have a displaced threshold going into the mountain, but your landing path is further ahead. Given limitations may require high-level negotiations with airline operators in order to get included on their schedule and route. And we are going through that right now with Douglas Charles and the enhancements that need to be made there. So the other site, based on the findings of this committee and the consulting firm, were deemed to have its challenges. One of the things that the designers were able to do with the new location, in addition to recommending the new location, was to do several scenario analyses, and you would appreciate that over a 20-year period, which is when the last airport design was done versus the new one, there have been some advancements in technology to enable a more detailed analysis of various sites and locations. So one of the things that I have noticed, though, is that in all the sites and locations that have been looked at, the vast majority of them are all in that same part of the island, which is referred to as the shoulder of Dominica, if you were to look at it on the map. So it is no surprise that this one would be in that same area. The only challenges that we needed to overcome was that question of the obstacle-free approach and landing, which would enable precision approaches. The wind orientation to ensure that we could meet the ICAO 95% usability standard, which we are, and which designs do meet. And then the question becomes, how long of a runway and how much earthworks would be required to execute. And that's where I think a lot of the newer technologies, LiDAR, radar, to be able to assess in great detail the various orientations of the runway within the constraints of the wind and the obstacles. You could then do various scenarios to determine, what is the optimal layout in that site that would maximize your usability from a wind obstacle standpoint and minimize the earthworks required. Another good thing, I think, of this location versus the other one, I think the other location was at altitude of 200 meters above sea level. And this one, it has touch points of 42 meters and 53 meters above sea level. The higher you go, the deeper the valleys, the higher the mountains, the more you'd have to film. And also, typically, the higher you go, the longer runway would be required as well. Because although at 200 meters is not exactly within that air density point, but typically the higher you go, the less dense the air and the longer the runway would be required. So the several factors came into play in terms of selecting the current location.
All right. You've mentioned meeting FAA requirements, and I know that the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority, ECA, is providing oversight of this process. Can you speak about the nature of your engagement thus far with ECA?
Absolutely. ECA is the only entity that really regulates airports in the Eastern Caribbean. Certification of the airport for use is going to come from ECA. They are part of, just like the FAA for the United States, part of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. Uh, so we have included them at every step of the way. One of the things that you don't want to have happen is to have a brand spanking new white elephant.
We don't want
So as I tell folks, no one likes surprises except they're good surprises, you know. So if it's positive and it's a gift, yeah, we all love those. Negative surprises, we don't like those. So in that spirit, we've sought to engage the involvement, the feedback, the oversight and counsel of the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority. We've had a few site visits
Okay.
To the site by the Director General of the of ECA, Civil Aviation, with a team. We've had follow-up visits just this year again to the site by members of ECA, and we've had correspondence going back and forth, sharing plans, sharing designs, to again seek their input and to ensure that any changes we make or any updates we make or any improvements or tweaks to particularly the airside part of the project, that they are aware and they are bought in and there are no objections on their part. So the intent is we hold hands and we march along on this journey. So when we get to the end, we're all apprised as to how we got here. Yeah, and they can be fully informed of what is happening and the development of the project.
All right. You're tuned in to Focus on Government and Development. We're in with Samuel Johnson. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the International Airport Development Company. Given the important nature of this discussion, we want to cover all our bases. We've already been given permission by the program director here at DBS Radio to go on just a little bit longer, past 9 o'clock. As mentioned earlier, you will have the opportunity to call in for a few minutes to ask your questions of Mr. Johnson. As together we learn more, understand better the dynamics of building an international airport for Dominica. It's no small project, right, Mr. Johnson?
Not at all.
Yeah. Who has been engaged to design the international airport? What is the facility expected to look like? Can you give us an idea, a preview of some of the design elements?
Yeah. So some of the the key pieces that that everyone thinks about when they think of an airport, the two key ones are the terminal and the runway. Although to operate an airport, the most important one is in addition to the runway, the air rescue and firefighting capabilities. I don't know if folks could remember the days of Canefield, where the terminal was really 4 telephone posts and galvanized. But we had air rescue and firefighting capability, because safety from a certification standpoint is a key element. So the current designs in looking at these pieces, so we've the runway, of course, we've spoken about the length of the runway being that of to accommodate wide body transatlantic aircraft. Mm-hmm. We've also added passenger boarding bridges to enable these aircrafts to unload directly into the terminal. So as of now, we could handle 2 wide-body aircrafts directly, in addition to 2 narrow bodies in the middle. We've tried to include some flexibility in the design. So we've introduced MAS stands, which can be used for both narrow-body and wide-body aircraft. So in addition to being able to handle the two wide bodies, we can do, I think, simultaneously up to 5 narrow bodies. Narrow bodies being your typical aircraft that you see in our neighbors coming from the US or Canada, the A320s or the 737s, which are very common in the area. The wide bodies would be your A330s, A350s, Boeing 777s, or even the 787, which are not that common in the area, but we would also be able to accommodate it. Going into the terminal, one point in terms of the runway size. If there's people might be wondering, well, what is 2850 meters and how does it compare to our neighbors? St. Vincent, Grenada, St. Lucia, their runways are all roughly 2744 meters, so 2,744 meters. Why 850? When we looked at the extended range Boeing 777-200 extended range, the requirements at maximum takeoff weight was roughly around 2,800. So that additional 50 meters above and beyond that. Now, I don't anticipate any aircraft leaving Dominica at maximum takeoff weight, because that implies not only are you full of passengers, but you're also full of cargo. The belly of the plane would be full. But still, if that eventuality were to arise, we wanted to ensure that we're able to respond to it. Coming into the terminal is roughly 14,000 square meters in size. How does that compare? We're clearly not going to be the biggest terminal, but we want to be the most passenger friendly and ensure that the passenger experience is world class and up to spec. If you were to reference again our neighbors to get a sense of size, or even Douglas Charles, I think Douglas Charles is roughly 3,000 square meters. So if my math serves me right, we're about 4 or more times the size of the existing Douglas Charles in terms of the terminal. And also, if you look at St. Lucia, Euronaur in St. Lucia, that terminal is about 9,000 square meters. So, and by the way, St. Lucia is now in the process of expanding that terminal. So we wanted to find a size that you could grow into. We've been talking about airport development for 50 years, and I would appreciate that it'd be a long time before we get another bite at the apple. So we want to make sure that we arrived at an optimal size that you could meet your current needs and still think of the next 20, 30, 40 years that you could grow into. The design on the inside, we've included a lot of retail space, because coming through the pandemic, there's been a big push for airports to look at non-passenger revenue. As we all appreciated during the pandemic, there weren't that many passengers. So you had airports getting creative in terms of trying to put these large pieces of infrastructure into some use that was other than passengers coming in and going out. And then we've also tried to add additional features and facilities to enhance the customer experience. So VIP lounges, executive lounges, which are world class with outdoor terrace. I think there are some features that should land us on the cover of a few airport magazines.
magazines.
And then some innovative features as well on the inside. We've also tried to ensure that the technology that is being used is not what is current today, but where others are going towards. So we're not playing catch up. We want to do leapfrog, and that involves the use of e-gates, some of which I know we're working closely with DASPER. The CEO of DASPER is intimately involved with the with IIDC as the chairman of the board. So we try to pull forward as many of these enhancements as possible into the current Douglas Charles. So one of the things you want to ensure that when you transition from Douglas Charles into this new facility, there aren't too many major changes, process or technology changes. You want to have a challenge in terms of the quantity, not necessarily the process or technology itself. So we're trying to get e-gates introduced before the new terminal is finished.
Is completed.
And even in addition to the terminal, I'll veer a little bit. One of the things that we're trying to do even before is to increase the number of airlines that are coming to the destination.
Yeah.
Or proactively engaging with them now. It's unfortunately the industry is not built it and they will come. You actually have to reach out and sell and engage over a period of years. So I think we learned from the St. Vincent experience in that typically a lot of these routine decisions take anywhere from 2 to 3 years before they are made, barring any extenuating circumstances. So we've also begun direct discussions with carriers that we would want to see come to Dominica.
Right, and these discussions have been going well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think when we talk of the commitment that is being made in developing a new airport, I think there's a level of seriousness that is introduced in the conversation. Is one thing to say, well, we're tweaking and we're expanding and we're looking and we're studying, but when you start showing the designs, the work on the ground, they tend to sit up and listen to what it is. It also shows a commitment to tourism in the destination, and as a relatively new destination, most of these airlines are interested in bringing their passengers to new happening hot destinations, and I think there's been a lot of progress made on that front in terms of Dominica being recognized and the accolades that it has received as a destination. So all of that helps in that conversation.
Mr. Johnson, we have a caller on the line, and I think it's as good a time as any to
Sure.
open up the lines and take a few questions.
Sure.
Caller, good evening. You're on to Focus on Government and Development.
Good evening. First of all, I want to congratulate you too, both the interviewer and the interviewee. And I'm very happy and delighted to hear about our international airport. I have 3 or 4 questions quickly. I know it's getting late early.
Yes.
First of all, I want Mr. Johnson to tell us when will the airport expected to be open, if it's 2027 or 2029 or whatever. Secondly, I want Mr. Johnson to tell us who is Mr. Johnson, because some people tend to believe that he came from Arabia or something. Mr. Johnson, I know, is a son of the soil who has worked abroad in various fields. He can tell us a little more about him and his experience. I know him professionally, and a son of the soil who has really worked tirelessly for Dominica. The other thing is, with a jet airport for Dominica, I'm sure there's going to accrue a lot of benefits. For instance, you can get a flight from Barbados to New York, 99 US. And from Dominica to Barbados is 1,300 and something, almost 400 US. So if a jet airport, I'm sure, is going to create some avenue where even people can travel more often and for less money. And we've been hearing some doubt in Thomas is saying the airport is not going to be completed, it's not going to be built. The other thing I want to ask you too is about Melvin Hall Airport, because people saying that there's extension and works going at Melvin Hall. But I'm sure, sir, I want you to speak to that, because even if you build in an international airport, you must create a sort of viable and a good area where people can come in and travel. Because first of all, Dominica, we have an international airport because people from all international states coming, all islands coming from the international circuit in terms of aviation kind of language. And what we need now is a jet airport. So I wanted to speak to that. There was one other thing, but I wanted to, yes. Some people say that, a military base is being built and all this kind of magic. But I am sure the people that building the airport, they have to be within close proximity. I want you to speak to those things, and I think we're doing a very good job for our country, and we should be patriotic and accept that Dominica's development is moving towards the apex, and we need to support. Thank you very much. I'm listening.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson, we'll skip question number 2 and
I
refer the
think
caller
with that
to
exhaustively.
the online broadcast which you can access after.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll start with the military base and work back. No, there's no military base being built. It's the contractor that is mobilizing, as I indicated earlier, to be on site. The contractor, as one appreciates, is going to be pushing through a very aggressive schedule, which will answer first question: when will it be opened? Mm-hmm. The schedule that we have right now is looking towards the end of 26, potentially going into 27. So it's a fairly aggressive construction schedule, somewhere about 3 to 4 years. St. Vincent, I think, took 13 years to do their project. Some of that partly due to some hiccups along the way. In terms of the benefits to offer jet airport, I think the cost of travel is one of them. But there's also in terms of the economic benefit to the country. Yeah. We've seen, even with the existing direct flights from Miami, the profile of the visitors coming to Dominica has changed in both quantity and type. North America in 2019, which was our best year, I think, in the last 10 years prior, or probably best year ever, North American passengers represented about 17% of the stayover visitors in Dominica. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, I think we have already gone past 32% from North American visitors. Additionally, it makes it a lot easier for folks to explore. I've been on the aircraft where people have come to Dominica for a couple of days just to check it out, because in talking to them, well, why did you come to Dominica? How did you hear about it? Word of mouth from a friend in a neighboring island, and a group of us just got together and we popped in for the weekend. Yeah. So it enables that type of traveler to come, in addition to the hardcore I must go to Dominica traveler, which is your Dominican nationals abroad who have found very creative ways over the years to get to Dominica, to and from Dominica. By if I think there was a train, we'd have taken it too. But we've flown into Guadeloupe and Martinique and taken ferries and boats, done connections in St. Martin and the like. So the level of knowledge you have to get to Dominica becomes a lot easier, because it's not you don't have to know the LIAT schedule and the Win Air schedule and the Antilles schedule. You could actually book directly. And some of these changes going to the third question about Melvin Hall enhancements, some of those changes actually go to the strategy that we've been following, which is what improvements can we make now to aggressively increase the visitor arrival to Dominica in parallel to the development of the new airport.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you'd appreciate, taking the passengers that we have in Melvin Hall today in a terminal that is roughly 3,000 square meters and transplanting that with no change into a terminal that is 14,000 square meters, you pretty much have a glorified dance hall. I think one can safely appreciate that if we were able to develop relationships now, if we're able to improve traffic now, then the transition into the new airport is just a shift and lift. So you already have the relationship. You just go across and bring bigger planes or bring more frequent travel. The enhancements at Melvin Hall really
Douglas Charles,
sorry, are really along that vein, in that with American Airlines coming in. Very few people know that American Airlines, for the first 6 months of their operations, flew into Dominica, and Dominica was the only route where they flew in with 2 captains.
Interesting.
Not a captain and a co-pilot, but 2 captains. And that was really to ensure that all their senior officials were trained in arriving in Douglas Charles. Additional to that, we were able to get feedback from them on what improvements could be done to make their reliability and operations that much better. Because if you were on a flight that circled around and was cancelled because of low cloud cover or weather, we had to make changes, and we are continuing to make changes in partnership with DASPA to improve that capability at Douglas Charles. So it's really one to keep the service that you have, get more of the service that you're getting. We've seen American schedule go up and down, and as I've always said in meetings, American Airlines, like all Fortune 500 companies, are on the hook for their earnings. And unlike hotels, airlines can pick up and go to different destinations. So we should not take it for granted that they're coming, they will always come. We have to do whatever is required to keep it and to grow the service that they have in Dominica. So the extension in Douglas Charles really is around one, ensuring that the service that we have can be more efficient, can be more reliable. American, on their departure, interestingly enough, not on landing, on their departure, is weight restricted. Because, and what does that mean? That means anywhere between 3 to 6 seats are blocked for weight to on their flight back up, because you, depending on the time of year, the allowance is made for the weight of the aircraft, potential headwinds, potential weather that you might have to fly around. And the aircraft that they are using into Dominica is the Embraer 175. So the flight into Dominica is probably one of the longer, if not one of the longest stage lengths out of Miami on the Embraer 175. So all of that to say, the improvements at Douglas Charles focused on working in partnership with American Airlines to ensure we can do everything that we can. We've updated procedures. I know Mr. Badwell at DASPA has done a lot in terms of the category rating and the procedures and the nav aids and everything. We've been working together, knowing all that we know, and it's not a theoretical, well, let's do it because we might. We are doing it because we have. Yeah? So those improvements are being made.
All right, and I'm happy you were able to address this particular question, and it is something I intend to bring up with the Tourism Minister, Dennis Charles, Honorable Dennis Charles, who has promised to be in on this program, hopefully very soon. So thank you for addressing that, and thank you for the wonderful questions, caller. But I wanted to shift focus a little bit back to Wesley, especially as we're supposed to be winding down in a few minutes. As work progresses, we have heard some concerns about the impact on the everyday lives and livelihoods of the people of Wesley and surrounding areas. What measures, if any, have you put in place to cushion or lessen the inconveniences to residents, to motorists, what with the movement of heavy equipment and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I one of the, I think, more obvious ones is the working in partnership with the local traffic authorities, the police in the area. We've gone through the village to identify areas, keep clears. The MMC, the developer, has also put, I know a lot of folks would have seen it, put personnel on the ground to ensure that there is facilitation of the movement of equipment. They also have individuals, if there is debris or anything that falls, to clean up after it. And then the time of work also. A lot of the movement through the village happened during the initial or early stages, when there was just that initial clearing of the site, and we were traversing the village to a material storage site just on the outskirts of the village, I think in London area, somewhere thereabout. But with the actual deeper clearing that's happening, a lot of that is being contained within the airport site. And I think the relocation that has commenced, and which is, I think, on the tail end, would have removed a lot of the directly impacted individuals from the construction zone to Joe Burton, which is, I don't know if you've been there, but it's up on high, overlooking, with really fantastic views in all directions. So a lot of those individuals that would have been right in the middle of the construction would have been relocated outside. But there are ancillary arrangements being made to ensure the free flow of traffic through the village, and ensuring that if there's any debris or dust or water trucks for dirt or dust, if that passes through the village, to keep that down.
The caller touched on the economic benefits of the construction of an international airport, and I think that's something we probably should explore in a separate program all by itself, because it's a really broad topic, and I don't think we have the time to touch on that too much more this evening. But we've heard a lot about the economic benefits associated with the project, and I wanted to find out if residents of Wesley and environs are already benefiting economically from the activities ongoing as we speak.
Absolutely. The economic benefit, I think, has started to accrue from even the development of Joe Burton. There were some 6 local contractors engaged in the building of that facility. The individuals involved in the initial clearing was also from Wesley, and employing individuals from Wesley. I know the contractor has reached out and put an ad out for vacancies.
Are people responded?
As of last week, I checked into it, and over 70 individuals have already been engaged, 70, and I think more to be engaged. So absolutely, there is opportunity in the direct construction, and I think there is opportunity in the indirect support of the construction. So as you would appreciate, there'll be a lot of individuals move into the area and all the support services that will be required for them during constructions. And during the actual operation of the airport, there will be additional opportunities as well. One of the benefits, though, that I forgot to mention in response to the question asked is the whole question of trade and the impact that direct flights could have with trade. So the challenge we have with the American Airlines flight right now is because of the weight restriction on departure, you do not have as much cargo or air freight handling capability as you would have with the larger aircraft operating out of Douglas Charles. So that opens a whole plethora of opportunities in terms of your cut flowers or fresh, time-sensitive produce getting to market in a timely manner. And even on the reverse, getting some of these commodities into Dominica. I think we all look forward to the return of a Amerijet or Amerijet type services. Yeah. They departed from Douglas Charles with the change of aircraft type that they operated. So that is one also I think we'd love to see return in terms of same day air freight cargo facilities, and that is there's an expanded cargo handling facility that was also added to the landside facilities of the new airport. So we've also taken that into consideration.
I feel there's so much more we could talk about the ongoing International Airport project. Mr. Johnson, I'd like to extend a standing invitation for you to visit us regularly here on Focus on Government and Development to keep us updated on a regular basis about this important project.
Sure.
Yeah. So any final comments before we wind up?
No, I think I want to commend actually the residents of Wesley and Woodford Hill. When I first came, I went on the ground and walked the village and met with the folks there. And I think anyone who passes there right now can sense the pregnant anticipation for the very positive, I think, change that is and development that's coming in that area. So the residents of Wesley and Woodford Hill and the embrace of this national project in their community is one I think should be commended. And also just want to put it out there that questions, comments, there's no need to speculate. You can call us, shoot an email, we'll respond. We don't need to get creative on construction phases and military bases and the like. We're here. Reach out if there are any questions. Seek clarification. We're more than happy to respond.
And certainly I'm willing to assist in that regard, in facilitating the questions and concerns and recommendations to your office, Mr. Johnson. And I think that's a very good point to end on, letting our listeners know that if you have any need for clarification, you can reach out to the officials of the International Airport Development Company to seek that level of clarification and information. Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for joining us and for your detailed explanations on certain aspects of the project. We look forward to hosting you again.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Look forward to it.
Sure. You've been tuned in to Focus on Government and Development, or regular Thursday program right here on DBS Radio, Carrier FM. We're also on social media. We look forward to being with you again very soon. We will speak with Tourism Minister Honorable Dennis Charles. You know, tourism is going through a very exciting period. And we look forward to a discussion with her. You know, tune in on Sunday for the 60 Minutes program, Dominica, and it's Wales are featured on that program, so be sure to tune in. And we look forward to being right here with you again next Thursday. My name is Dion Dura Smith. Have a good evening.